After driving 12 hours in the snow to surprise my wife with a cake on her birthday, I heard her laughing with her sister saying, "I hope he crashes. That way I get the insurance money and I'm free of that burden." I left the cake on the table. The next morning it was gone. 3 weeks later my marriage to Elena collapsed. It had been deteriorating slowly for 5 years. I was 34, she was 32, and what began as a love story had become a cold coexistence of two strangers under the same roof. "Seriously, are you going to wear that shirt for dinner with my friends?" was her usual phrase when we went out. "You look like a nobody." Her biting comments had increased over the years like drops of water slowly carving stone. At first they hurt. Over time I got used to them. I worked double shifts at the industrial plant to maintain the lifestyle she demanded. Meanwhile, Elena dedicated herself to her projects, none of which generated income, but all required considerable investment. The latest had been an interior decorating course that cost as much as 3 months of mortgage payments. "It's an investment in my future, I don't expect you to understand," she told me when I questioned the expense. Her tone always carried that nuance of superiority, as if I were a child incapable of understanding complex concepts. I had met her when we were both university students. I studied industrial engineering, she studied communication. In those days I admired her ambition, her desire to have the best. Over time I understood that the best meant the most expensive, the most exclusive, what provoked envy. "Look what Claudia bought." She'd show me pictures on her phone during dinner. "Her husband knows how to treat a woman." If I had to identify the beginning of the end, it would probably be the arrival of her sister Laura in town. 2 years older than Elena, Laura was the amplified version of all her flaws. Since she divorced and moved into an apartment 15 minutes from our house, her presence became constant and intrusive. My sister says that a man who really loves his wife doesn't make her wait to have the house she deserves. Elena told me after a visit from Laura, referring to her desire to move to a more exclusive neighborhood. Laura never hid her contempt for me. "My little brother-in-law, always so conformist," she would say with a smile that never reached her eyes. At family gatherings, her comments were like small poison darts. Elena always had the potential for great things. It's a shame that circumstances limit her. That February 15th, Elena's 33rd birthday, I decided to make one last attempt to save what was left of us. I asked for 2 days off without telling her. I drove to Riverdale, 6 hours away, to buy the cake from the bakery she always mentioned when we watched that baking show. "Someday I'll try one of those," she'd say. "They say they're divine," she'd comment with that dreamy tone I hadn't heard in years when she spoke to me. The weather forecast announced a snowstorm, but I thought I could avoid it if I left early. I was wrong. 4 hours after picking up the cake, I found myself driving at 20 kilometers per hour on an almost invisible road under the snow. The return trip took me more than twice as long as planned. I arrived after midnight. The living room lights were on and Laura's car was parked in front of our house. It wasn't unusual. Since her divorce, she spent more time at our house than at hers. I parked 2 houses down so as not to ruin the surprise. I carefully took out the cake box, protecting it from the snowflakes that continued to fall. I approached stealthily, using the key to open the front door without making a sound. Their voices came from the kitchen, between laughter and the clinking of glasses. I stopped in the hallway, thinking about how to make my entrance. "He told me he'd be with his mom tonight," it was Laura's voice. "As if I care where he is while he works like a donkey," Elena replied with disdain. "I wish there were more storms like this," Laura continued. "Can you imagine a slip, a bad turn?" My heart raced, hoping the conversation would take a different turn. Don't talk about that," Elena responded, but her tone didn't show disapproval but caution. "Okay." Her voice dropped, but in the silence of the house, every word came through clearly. If something happened to him on one of those roads, at least the sacrifice of paying those high monthly premiums would be worth it. $500,000 isn't bad at all," Laura continued. "And finally you'd be free of that burden. You could sell this house, start over." Elena's laughter pierced me like a sheet of ice. "I even know what I'd do first, the trip to Europe," they both exclaimed in unison, followed by more laughter. I stood motionless, feeling as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the house. The cake box now weighed like a slab of cement in my hands. I backed away silently to the entrance. I considered confronting them. I imagined 1,000 scenarios, 1,000 words. Finally, I did the only thing that made sense at that moment. I quietly entered the living room, placed the cake on the coffee table next to the house keys, and left without making a noise. The snow was still falling when I started the car. I had no idea where to go. I only knew that I couldn't spend another minute under the same roof as the woman who was waiting for my death to collect life insurance. I drove aimlessly for almost an hour, my mind stunned and my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. Finally, I stopped at a roadside motel, the kind that doesn't ask too many questions when you pay cash at 2 a.m. The room was small and depressing, with a creaking single bed and a heater that worked half the time. I sat on the edge of the mattress, trembling from the cold and from the reality that had just hit me like a train. I didn't sleep that night. Elena and Laura's words resonated in my head like an endless echo. I hope he crashes. $500,000 isn't bad at all. You'd be free of that burden. And that laughter, that complicit laughter between them that pierced my soul every time I remembered it. The next morning, my eyes burning from lack of sleep, I organized my thoughts. Was I exaggerating? Maybe it was just a bad joke between sisters. But I always came back to that laughter, to that tone of complicity that left no room for doubt. My phone vibrated with messages from Elena. Where are you? You didn't come to sleep. Are you okay? Call me when you see this. No real concern, just the basic protocol expected of a wife. I decided not to respond. I needed time, space, and above all, information. That same day, while Elena would be in her decorating course, I discreetly returned home. I collected important documents, some clothes, and my personal computer. While looking for my papers in the study, I found something disturbing. An envelope from the insurance company. I opened it and discovered that Elena had increased my life insurance policy exactly 3 months ago, from $100,000 to $500,000, using the general power of attorney that I had granted her the previous year. The paper trembled in my hands. I could no longer deceive myself into thinking that I had misinterpreted the conversation. This was premeditated, calculated. I called Mick, an old friend from university who was now a lawyer. I need your help, I told him after briefly explaining the situation. I want a divorce, but first I need to protect myself. Mick gave me clear instructions. Document everything, change passwords, transfer my share of the funds to an individual account. Formally initiate the separation process. Don't do anything impulsive, he advised. Everything must be legal and documented. The following days became a meticulous operation. I changed all my passwords, email, social networks, online banking. I opened an account at another bank and transferred my share of our joint savings, leaving Elena's share intact. I notified my work about my new situation and asked them not to give any information about me to anyone. Meanwhile, Elena alternated between increasingly irritated messages and calls that I didn't answer. Carlos, this isn't funny anymore. What the hell is wrong with you? If you think you can just disappear like this, you're very wrong. 5 days after my discovery, I returned home, knowing that Elena would be out. I collected the rest of my important belongings and left a letter on the table. Elena, I was home on your birthday night. I heard your conversation with Laura about the insurance and your desire to be free of this burden. I also know about the increase in the policy 3 months ago. I have started divorce proceedings. You have 2 weeks to find another place to live. The house is in my name, and I will not continue paying to maintain your lifestyle. Starting tomorrow, the electricity and water services will be suspended. I have left enough money in our joint account for you to support yourself during this period. Do not try to contact me directly. Any communication must be through my lawyer, Carlos. I attached Mick's card and left an envelope with enough cash for 2 weeks. However hurt I was, I couldn't simply leave her without immediate resources. Before leaving, I walked through the house one last time. Every corner held a memory, some good, many bitter. I stopped in the kitchen, where that conversation had shattered the last vestiges of our marriage. When I left, I called the electric company and the water service to schedule the disconnection for the next day. It wasn't cruelty. It was a clean break that would force Elena to move, to get out of my life definitively. That night, alone in my motel room, I reread old messages and reviewed photographs on my phone. Now I could clearly see what I had previously ignored. Elena's forced smile on our last vacation, her distant gaze when I talked about my projects, the subtly derogatory comments that I normalized for years. "It's so simple that even you could understand it," she would say when I asked her about her projects. "At least you try to dress well," she'd comment when I made an effort to please her. "If you had a little more ambition, we'd be somebody," she constantly reproached me. Each memory confirmed that I had made the right decision. It wasn't just because of that conversation. It was because of all the small truths I had chosen to ignore for years. The next morning, my phone exploded with calls and messages. Elena had found the letter. "You've lost your mind. You can't do this to me. Cutting off the services is a joke. It was all a misunderstanding, Carlos. We have to talk." I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I blocked her number and focused on rebuilding my life, step by step, day by day. A week after my letter, Elena began to crumble. I didn't know it immediately. I found out through people I couldn't avoid. First it was Jorge, a friendly coworker. "Your wife was here," he told me uncomfortably. "She seemed desperate. Security had to escort her out when she tried to enter the plant." Then it was my landlord, calling me alarmed. "The apartment is fine, but that woman keeps coming. She says she's your wife and that she's worried. Last time we had to threaten to call the police." Mick kept me informed of the legal aspects. "She's hired a lawyer, but her position is weak," he explained. "The house is in your name, bought before the marriage. The funds you withdrew were proportional to your income. There are no children. Legally, you are in a solid position." But what really impacted me was the video. My neighbor Roberto sent it to me 2 weeks after my departure. "I think you should see this," his message said. The video, taken from his security camera, showed Elena trying to get into the house, discovering that her key no longer worked. I had changed the locks, and then collapsing on the porch, crying uncontrollably. Her appearance was alarming. She had lost weight, her hair was unkempt, her clothes, always impeccable, were wrinkled and dirty. Seeing her like that didn't give me satisfaction, only a deep sadness. Not for what I was losing, but for what we never really had. 3 weeks after my disappearance, I received an email from Elena. I had avoided checking my personal email, focusing only on the professional one, but that day, for some reason, I decided to face the inbox I had ignored. Among dozens of notifications and promotions, a subject stood out. "Please read me. Elena." I hesitated to open it. Finally, sitting in my new small apartment, I decided to face whatever it contained. "Carlos, I've tried to contact you in every possible way. I understand that you don't want to talk to me, but I need you to read this. I know what you heard that night. It sounds horrible, I know, but you have to believe me, it was just a stupid conversation. Laura always pushes me to say things I don't really mean. We drank too much, we said silly things about the insurance. Yes, I increased it, but it was because I was really worried about your well-being working so many hours. I would never ever hurt you. I've had to move in with my mother. It's humiliating at my age, but I had no choice. I lost my place in the course because I can't afford it now. Laura says you're cruel for interpreting an innocent joke this way, but I know it's my fault. I've been a terrible wife. I took you for granted, I belittled your efforts, I was selfish. Please, Carlos, give me a chance to explain in person, to show you that I can change, that I want to change. I love you, I've always loved you, even though I haven't known how to show it. Elena." I read the email 3 times. Every word seemed sincere, and yet I recognized the patterns. That same day, I also received a message from Laura. Unlike her sister, it was direct and hostile. "You're a miserable person for ruining my sister's life over a stupid comment. Elena is devastated, losing weight, barely sleeping. Is that what you wanted? Revenge for a joke, for an insurance policy you would never have used against you? Well, congratulations, you succeeded. You destroyed a woman who only made the mistake of marrying you." I didn't reply to either message. A month later, while signing the final divorce papers in Mick's office, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. It wasn't the ending I had imagined for my marriage, but it was the one I needed. "Are you okay?" Mick asked after the last document was signed. "I will be," I answered, and for the first time in a long time I really believed it. I learned from mutual friends that Elena eventually recovered, at least superficially. She found a job in a boutique, she still lived with her mother, and she rarely mentioned my name. Laura, always resilient, found another cause to fight for. Now she defended her sister as the victim of a controlling man who abandoned her without warning. Sometimes on quiet nights I still hear that laughter, that tone of contempt when they talked about me. And even though it hurts, I'm grateful to have heard it. That conversation, cruel as it was, freed me from a life of self-deception. The most valuable thing I learned is to recognize the signs, those small truths that we refuse to see when we are trapped in toxic relationships. The contempt disguised as jokes, the normalized emotional coldness, the constant feeling of not being enough. Today, I live in a modest but cozy apartment. I've taken up old passions I had abandoned, reconnected with friends, even started dating occasionally, although without rushing into another relationship. Last week in a bookstore, a woman smiled at me as we both reached for the same book. We exchanged a few words, laughed at the coincidence, and when she asked if I'd like to have coffee someday, I felt something I had forgotten. The simple and genuine excitement of connecting with someone without expectations or emotional games. I don't know if anything will come of that pending coffee. What I do know is that now I can recognize the difference between someone who values me and someone who simply tolerates me, between someone who sees me as a partner and someone who sees me as a means to their ends. Sometimes I wonder what Elena thought when she found that cake on the table. If she immediately understood what it meant. If she felt even a moment of true remorse. But that answer, like so many others, is no longer important. The important thing is that I learned to love myself enough to walk away from someone who didn't really love me. Have you ignored obvious signs in your relationships? How long did it take you to see what was always right in front of you? Sometimes self-love begins with a simple acknowledgement. I deserve more than this. I deserve truth, respect, and genuine affection. And sometimes that recognition comes in the form of a birthday cake left on a table, a silent witness to truths we can no longer ignore. The most important love is the one we must give ourselves. Recognizing our worth is not selfishness but survival. The signs of contempt and devaluation are often right in front of us, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to have the courage to see them. True growth begins when we allow ourselves to hear what we already knew. We deserve respect, consideration, and a love that builds, not destroys, like that cake left on the table. Sometimes the simplest acts become the most powerful witnesses of our recovered dignity. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to Echoes of History, give it a like, and leave a comment telling us if you've ever ignored signs in a relationship. Your experiences could help others recognize similar patterns in their lives.